Hi from Nick.
And hi from Martin.
And today we are going to analyze a property on Fairford Way in South Reddish. It's a classic 1970s property or late 60s, and it needs a bit of work, but I think it's the right kind of work. Now let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go through the estate agency pictures to give you general context for the place. And then I think this one has a 3D walkthrough, I think. Now, we do know, because I spoke to the agent a little earlier today, that there is an offer already on the property for around the asking price. So that's interesting. And the other backstory to this is that a woman or lady is the vendor, and she started stripping the property out, and then her story is that her child was accepted into another school, and therefore she's decided to sell. Now, it may just be that she didn't want to have a go at the renovation, who knows? And of course, a rising market, she'll probably come out okay. Which leads me to an important question. When was it last sold? Okay, no, so it may be, I don't know, no sales history. So either she's owned it for a long time, possibly as a buy to let, possibly wanted to live in there, don't know. But okay, no sales history, fine. Now, it's, as I say, classic, what seems to be a 1970s. Is that what you're seeing from your property age thingy?
Yep.
It's got the vinyl flooring from the 70s, which was never pulled up. So it would be a concrete pad, concrete flooring, basically with vinyl on top. And it's had some modifications over the years, like this fireplace.
I think between 50 and 66 should be.
Yeah. It's the beginning of that kind of Scandinavian open lifestyle type stuff where you have lots of open, wide open spaces and so on. So we're going to have a look at the 360 because I think those are very helpful. So as you see, anyway, it's all stripped out. The ceiling is plasterboard. That's good. Some heavily textured wallpaper. But I think if that was stripped out, I think the plaster underneath should be okay. So what we're always concerned about is once you start pulling a place apart, if it's an old building, what's lurking underneath? And in this case, probably not much. So that's good. You can never be sure, but stripping a house back, quite a big thing. Now, because there is quite a lot of work to do in this house, I'd quite like to dwell upon a few things around renovation costs and so on, but we'll talk about that shortly. And this is very retro. I think one would possibly reorganize the kitchen and dining area and just make it one open space.
Yeah, and when I said for renovation around 20k around, so you never know.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in that order. At least the bathroom doesn't need any work.
It just needs upgrading. I will upgrade because this location demand for that.
Okay, so new bathroom fittings, but probably just don't touch the tiles.
Yeah, I will not touch the tiles. The colors is not the best, but it's okay.
Yeah. But as you say, they're not the best, are they? But it's acceptable, I guess. So let's have a look through here. So this is fancy. But what we really want is the video tour. Do we? No, we want what I want is, okay, there's the estate, and this is helpful. Covers a lot of the stuff that we like to talk about. So 65 square meters. It's a bit tight. It's not 3.8 acres, by the way, and low flood risk, etc. So fine. This is what I want. Condition is such a big deal here, so it's worth just having a really good look. Yeah, I definitely think, obviously it needs a new kitchen.
Yeah.
I think the story with this property was that it was a buy-to-let and it had economy kitchen, as you see here, and she decided that she might want to actually live there because it is a nice house and a nice place, and started the strip out, and obviously plans changed. So this is somebody who obviously has a few quid, bit of money in other words. All right, so overall this does not look structural, I don't think.
Yeah, the tilings looks okay. I will keep them there.
Yeah.
For example.
So the big deliberation with this property is whether this is structural. I don't think it is, because that's just wood. So the point being, if I go back to the floor plan, I'll explain why this is a huge question. If you strip this out, do you have to put a steel beam in? If you do that, you're into the world of building regulations and all sorts of stuff. If it's not structural, if it's just simply partition, it can come out and you just don't have the risks around building regulations and so on. So the question is, which bit is structural? Well, here's how you can tell. So the first thing is, we know that this is 2.9 meters and this is 2.8 meters. Because 10 centimeters is a lot and not being particularly accurate, then I predict that this is your structural wall here, this one running across here. Because if you look, it is 5'11" by 5'11" by 5.7, so 5.7 wide, and this is 9.6 wide. So the structural wall, the wall here for the bathroom, anyway, the point is it's probably not structural. This is good, very good actually, because that means that you can turn this into an open plan kitchen dining area, which would be lovely. And you can just see how that would work. Just get rid of that and then open the whole thing out. So we're kind of creeping up towards the 25 grand mark for this work, by the way, because it would, you know, once you get into remodeling and so on, but I think it's the right kind of remodeling, because the wrong kind of remodeling is trying to put an extension in here. And the issue with this house is that you've got shared access to these back garages, good storage space, but the problem is that you got to keep that pathway open unless you agree with the next door neighbor, but they're probably going to say no. So they've got an extension on theirs, but we need to look at the maps and just see how it's all laid out, because that tells us the potential.
Yeah, you can do in this property exactly. You can do the extension. I already analyzed that. You can see.
Yeah, there is a way. It's all about whether you can tuck a car in between here. Like, for example, on this conservatory, they've decided
the property is on the right, near the pin on the right.
Yeah. But if you see here, they've made a concession. They've decided that they want the conservatory, but they don't want to try and park a car in here, because there's no way you're going to squeeze a car through that gap. Well, you might, but it's going to be really tight.
And maybe smaller, maybe motorbikes.
But you can see here, exactly, motorbikes would fit in and storage. And you can see here, these people have gone for a conservatory, but a shorter one. And the payback is that they can actually get a car in there, probably. It's tight. But then, you know, when space is so valuable, do you really want to put a car in a garage? I don't think people really care anymore. So, and also modern cars are more weatherproof than cars back in the early 60s, and that's why garaging isn't such a big deal. Anyway, it's just one of these things. It's worth. So I think, yes, you could get some kind of an extension in here, but the real value gain is sorting out the footprint for the property. Anyway, the other benefit to this property, by the way, is the slightly longer garden. And if you notice here, you see on this property, it's maybe hard for you to see. I'll try and On this property, you've got basically this house is shoved forward 6-8 feet, something like that, and therefore you don't have such an angle for the car to go into. The car comes in, does a little turn, and in the garage. Here, because you don't have that issue, and because this is your land, you could probably fit a bigger conservatory in here and still be able to get a car in there. So that's your main criteria. So I think it's a very promising property for a load of these reasons.
Yeah,
All right.
I think it's really nice. It have a big land for extension, and a lot of properties around are extended. So
yeah, it's let's see if we can.
Yeah, and usually some of the properties have loft rooms and the extra loft room.
Okay, now this is a small issue. So you've got the stairs here, and then you've got this as a storage space. So this is fairly commonplace. And the question is, can you actually fit a bedroom? Sorry, can you actually fit a bed in here?
Yeah, you can.
So it's got to be 6 feet, or 6 feet, 2 meters.
Yeah, it's 3 meter and 10 centimeters on 180, so you can fit.
Yeah, I think you can. The good thing about properties of this period and more recent is that they actually think about these things, where Victorian houses were just like put two up, two down, don't really think about it. This has had some consideration. The only thing, there's a radiator there. I'm just not really clear on where that bed would actually sit.
Yeah,
because in theory, the bed sits here.
Yeah, but I think it will be, but it will not be an issue for now, because if you make it modern, usually if they have, you will find a lot of professionals who will like to live here because of the location. It's a very nice location.
Well, bedroom 3 then becomes a study, and I think the way a lot of people deal with this is they have a raised bed or a bunk bed, raised bed usually, and then it's a bunk bed without the lower bunk, and then people get in on the top, and that's how you occupy that room. All right, and this looks fine. This is vinyl flooring, reasonably pleasant tiling. Interesting that you've got these grab handles. Now these are usually for older people, so I wonder. Okay, it's interesting. I'm hypothesizing. I'm like going, well, what are the clues? What do they tell us? An older person lived here, so this could have been an older tenant, or it could have been the owner's mum or something like that, and it was inherited, and she decided to maybe strip it out. Who knows? But in any event, doesn't really matter, because the backstory to a property, whilst it's interesting, doesn't usually help when considering the sale.
And the wiring, can we find some plugs?
Yeah, we need to find that. So I assume that's the circuit board in there. Oh yeah, plugs, right, yes. I did look earlier and they're fine. So here we go.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I think it's probably 1960s.
Yeah,
I doubt it's rewired.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a nice one.
I did spend some time this morning reading through regulations for property, for electrical certification for landlords, and broadly it just cannot be dangerous. So if it's going to give you electric shock, it's an issue. But the big deliberation, of course, is what's the story with an acquisition where you don't have a modern fuse board? And annoyingly, with this, I don't see any pictures of a fuse board anywhere. I haven't looked at the videos yet, so we're going to have a look at those and see what we can see. But let's see what else we've got. Okay, and it's an electric heater. The good thing is the plugs are up here. So odds are that the wiring is post 1960s. So I was reading that there were huge numbers of reforms in the 1960s around building quality, building control. And one of the reasons you see so many terraced houses with big renovations that occurred somewhere in the 60s, 70s was because building regulations had tightened up so much that old circuit boards, old wiring was just not acceptable. And therefore they were confronted with a nasty, unpleasant choice, which was renovate the building or let it run derelict. And that's why you saw so many terraced houses being demolished in the 60s and 70s, because they just weren't viable to repair, and thus they were knocked down. And so a lot of these terraced houses we see today, if they've had that renovation, they are the survivor houses. You know, they were worth keeping even 50 years ago. So, okay, just sort of general. One thing that's encouraging, by the way, is that looks like gypsum plaster. Now, how do I know that? Well, okay, this is because I used to have a building company, and gypsum is essentially this kind of reddish stuff, but it also has cork in it, or sort of, yeah, cork usually, as far as I remember. It has well, not necessarily cork, but it has a filler in it to make it lighter, and it's generally a better quality plaster. So if you're ripping this stuff off, which is some kind of lining paper, you take that off, then you're likely to get a decent surface underneath. So this is all really encouraging. Flooring, fine, fine. You just floor over that, obviously. And I think, is that gas or electricity? I can't really tell. I would imagine it's gas. Now, the issue with gas and rental properties is danger. I think it's being capped off, because you can see here on the top right, there's a little capping thing, and that would be for the gas. Okay, very nice, relatively modern, a little extra heat somewhere.
Yeah, this is in the bedroom.
Yeah, so electric heaters are okay. Ideally, you would have a gas central powered heater, but if they are compliant, you know, they pass electrical certification, all good. And the benefit of electrical is certainly, at the moment, gas is incredibly expensive. And I can even see myself buying a load of electric heaters in the fairly near future, sometime in the middle of summer when everyone else is thinking about sun cream, and using them to heat our house, because I think gas is just going to be ridiculous. So I'm just saying electric heaters are kind of a good thing. Certainly people get much more conscious of EPC certification. All right, it all looks nice. Still no fuse board. That bathroom is acceptable.
Yeah, I will just make it a little bit more. I will spend like 300 grand just add a mirror.
I'm always disappointed when I see bad painting, but anyway. You know, you could just leave these textured surfaces alone, but the real question hereafter is, go on, lift the box, lift it, open it, come on. No, he's not. Or she, I don't know who did this viewing, but is that if it's a nice property, as it were, then it needs a certain amount of good finishes.
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. I do slightly despair when I see a boiler in a bedroom, honestly. It's not a huge problem. It's just an annoying problem. Like, why would you do that?
And this in the smallest bedroom. So basically here is the box.
So okay.
This property will be a study room. It will not be a real bedroom.
Yeah. Well, when I talked to a landlord about this recently, I said, well, look, you got a boiler in the bedroom. What's the story here? And his argument was, well, it's never on at night. So what's the problem? Valid point. Anyway, all looking okay. I think with this house, it just needs a lot of stripping back, a lot of prep, and then you're going to end up with lovely, smooth, walls. Now, I say that I want to get Mandy involved in this. I need to ask her for her opinion on this, but I think these walls should be good enough to strip back and not need reskimming. It's just, but saying that, it's quite a big renovation, this. And that's why people are afraid to offer on it, even though it's a really nice property in a really nice part of the world. Okay, so let's have a look at the next video.
And the neighborhood is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I haven't seen, but it's very polite. It's your classic, like 1970s suburbia, very peaceful, nice, polite people, all very polite. There's a dog hatch or whatever, a cat flap. It's where polite people live. I don't know what, that's a light. Okay. I think, do we have another one? Sorry if we're dwelling on condition, but this property is all about condition, and that's why we need to just dig into this a little bit. A retrofitted porch, obviously. Come on, show us the circuit board, dude. Come on, open the door. You know you want to.
Yes.
Here we go. Finally.
It's old.
It is old. Okay. That is that a circuit board, or is that a?
I cannot see exactly.
It's either an alarm or a circuit board. I would say it's an alarm. Okay, I want to get Mandy to have a look at this. I think the good thing is, right, it's ready to go. It doesn't really matter if you're stripping back wires and adding stuff. I'm just not 100% clear on the electrics for this property, how that's going to work.
Yeah, but if you change, it's adding around 3,000 more around. So.
Well, the consumer circuit board is 500 quid and they want a metal one. But the real question that I'm not clear about is what happens with the wiring, because obviously wires.
You can put a boiler here, I think.
Yeah, you could reroute it and put it down here. Exactly.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I will put that.
But then
so like
that
this, you will have more space in that bedroom, because it's the smallest bedroom with the boiler, which is not the best.
I think the vendor gave up on this because she realized it was a lot more work than she really wanted to do.
Yeah, maybe she was thinking like 5K to 10K to fix all, but no, it's not that.
The real question is down to Martin and his estimations on valuations when renovated. The good thing is we've got lots of similar houses, so we kind of know what we're in for. Yeah. And no issues with the structure of the building, obviously. That all looks really clean. So it's a very tidy 70s property, but it does need a bit of work. I mean, a lot of work. But the real thing is, how does it stack up on all the other fronts? So let's have a look. Very good demographics. I'll make that bigger so you can see it. Make this, get this out of the way. Now, previously I would like to do a whole narrative about this, but I'm not. And the answer is it's really quiet around here. There's very little crime. That's good. Demographics are interesting here. So this has got a lot more AB than I usually see. So it is a upper middle class area. And that would be due to the new builds. So there's a load of relatively new build here. And this looks like ex-local authority, I would have thought, just by the footprint, but I don't know. And this is obviously 1960s, 70s new build. And typically the way it goes is you have the new build and people have to have a certain amount of wealth to live there, to buy the property from you and all of that. And then the demographics generally hold at that level thereafter, unless the overall economy in an area is declining, and then obviously things sink a little bit. But over here, it's very nice. This whole enclave, this whole patch is good. So fine. Now, the next question is, what about the growth? And the growth is exceptional.
Yeah.
I did a quick SK5, and it's like some of the highest growth in the country. It's very easy to just go, oh, it's only 21% real growth, whatever. But just pause, if you would, and let's just pick somewhere for contrast, because people often think, oh, it's always good everywhere. No, it's not. Bradford is hemorrhaging. So, you know, there are places around the country which are just tanking. Liverpool, Blackpool is either sideways or going down. Very few places are going up. So just for context. Now this is going up extraordinarily. The big deliberation I have with this area is where will prices top out? And my general rule of thumb is that Manchester is about half the property prices of London. If you exclude central London, which is just its own little thing, but if you just go outside of central London and you're talking about the suburbs, the average three-bed semi is, let's say, £550,000. That would be for an average area, nothing special going on, just your average area. Now, this is better than your average area, and we're under half that price. So without kind of going on about it, the way I see these things working is it's kind of layer upon layer upon layer, and as house prices increase, all ships rise with the rising tide in these kind of areas, and therefore people, when they sell their house at a higher price. They have more cash to work with, therefore they pay a bit. They can look at properties at a higher price, and it just kind of carries on. So what am I saying? What's sustainable? 350 would be sustainable in this. So median price 240. I say 350 would be acceptable here. This area did okay in the last crash. It didn't hit too hard. It grew quite a lot in the last upcycle, didn't crash very hard, and relative to the peak of the market, it's 13% up. And this is all inflation adjusted. What that means is you got the nominal house price, but if you adjust for inflation, you go, well, how much was inflation? It's all to do with purchasing power, basically. Yep. So the point is that you have a 21% increase in purchasing power if you bought this property 3 years ago. So huge growth. Is it sustainable? Not really in the long term, but it's definitely going to be riding up for the next 2 or 3 years, and then there'll be a crash, but the crash isn't going to be that excessive, I expect. It's all inflation driven. And the big thing I'm seeing now is just a lot of investors coming in because they've got cash that's dwindling. Because inflation, 10% inflation or more, they've got to get their money into something that's productive. So that's what's going on. So this is why this market's a bit crazy. And even though you take a lot of risk with this property renovation, and you might be in for a 30,000 renovation, the question is, how is it worth it? And this is where we go to Martin. And Martin, tell us what you know.
EPC is D, and 65 meters square, it's small, but the EPC D and it's 67, it can be B easily. So, I mean, easily you need to add solar roof, solar panel on the rooftop.
So close to the wire. It's a really healthy EPC, actually.
Yeah, and it's bad condition. So there is no risk, very low risk, which is great. The reddish, this part is outside from the coal mining risks, so you're safety about that. So basically, this property doesn't have any like a risk, and it doesn't have selling in the last 30 years around. But what I can see for the years of build, some property doesn't have, as we can see, but should be around 50, 66.
Yeah, just by the way, just to say, I think the story with this house is the vendor inherited the property from a parent or somebody, because you can see there's grab rails and all of that kind of stuff. So they were thinking about living in there. They obviously got a bit scared about the renovation costs and realized it was just a huge amount of hassle and you need good contractors. She probably didn't have good contractors. And then the tipping point was probably her daughter going, you know what, I don't want to go to school here, I want to go somewhere else. And then she thought, you know what, it's a good market, I'm going to sell it.
Yeah. So basically the location is really nice. You have a lot of green space around. It's not really close, but it's like 6-7 minutes walking. Also, you have markets here. Not really close, but still okay. It's 10 minutes walking. And you have some schools, but not the but I guess not the ones what she like. You have here, and you have somewhere schools here. You have bottom here schools as well. So when you want to go to Manchester, by transport is around 39 minutes. Yeah, because you take a bus and take the train. And if you want to go to Stockport, it's really, really close. It's like 19 minutes. So depends where is your job or so. But most of the time, this is part of the Stockport. So a lot of people who live in Stockport will love to rent here because it's really quiet. It's really nice area. Yeah. So the location is like really, really good. And also for the comparables, I will go with property data. So for example, this property was sold 245, and I will just check it. It's similar type of property, and you can, but it have, but same condition maybe, but it have extension. So that extension, let's set like 15K, so that's 230.
When was it sold? So you would add another 10% onto that, so 245, so it's 280.
Yeah. So, but with extension, so minus extension, so that's around the same price, 240, 45. This as well, but this is the same, I guess.
Yeah, the thing with these extensions are, you get the extra footage, but you don't get the...
Yeah, this is also with the extension. And it's little
well, it's a conservatory, so it's not really...
Yeah, it's not really extension. Yeah, but you can add as well, and it will not cost you a lot, but you can add when you do all the renovation.
And how much was that sold for?
This was 245 as well, but we don't know exactly when.
Right, so we don't know
when it was. So basically, also you have one who is sold for 260.
Also, by the way, just noting that kitchen had been opened up, so that partition was taken out, and the kitchen in that previous photograph.
This property extend the kitchen.
I don't think that's it's not a great use of space, and it's just no.
Yeah, and it's.
I would just make it a big open room in the back.
Yeah, 260. I don't know when. And this is transaction in June. 230.
Yeah.
But it's in better condition. Not the best condition, but
so again, if you add an extra 23.
No, the walls. Yeah. The walls look like they need to strip out as well.
What's going on with that bedroom? Can you just... Sorry.
Yeah, they use it as
the small bedroom.
Yeah, with the kids room.
Right. Okay. So can you just show me the floor plan on that?
It's the same. Just the kitchen.
Yeah, so this is the way to do it. This is the answer, and it's not a huge cost, and it'll actually just really improve the property. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So as we can see, the properties with no extension selling 230 to 45. It's similar condition, not a little bit better, let's say.
Yeah.
So, but not the best condition. And when you check for the rent will be 1,150 at least. And if you make a converse, like a little extension, not really structural, and if you make it like wide open, just not really huge, just a small one like
But you
this
say
one.
that, you know, the thing with the extent, there's conservatories.
Yeah.
There's two things, a few things. So there's a few things to think about. One is a conservatory, fine, but it's not really that beneficial.
Yeah, it's not.
An actual extension will just stretch the back room out, and I don't think it'll make it very usable.
Yeah.
So if it was me, I wouldn't bother with any kind of conservatory extension. I would just make that kitchen
wide open.
Remove and then it's the cheapest option, and it'll add the greatest value to the property.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that, as you can see in the future, if you want, this one had the extension, like make a bedroom on the loft. I saw one more here.
I hadn't noticed that actually.
Yeah, here as well. So basically, you have opportunity to make this on the roof, which one extra bedroom always better, and it will be a large one. So I think this property have a lot of opportunity, and it's really nice. And 230, you can go 235, and I think you will have chance to take it.
All right, so then we look at the viability of it, and I'll share screen. We'll do some numbers. And where am I? Okay, here we go. Right. So we're saying 235,000.
Yeah.
The thing with this is the buyer will want to know that, sorry, that the vendor will want to know that the buyer is going in with their eyes open and they understand what it's going to take. I'm going to say £30,000 renovation, because I think it's better to overdo than underdo. What's the rent?
1150.
Yeah, it makes the yield thin.
Yeah, but the renovation,
but it's the capital growth.
Yeah, but I think the renovation will be lower. If it's 25,000.
The condition risks are that you have to do a load of rewiring, and you've got a couple of rooms which need extra radiators, and you might want to remove the boiler from that spare bedroom to make it an actually usable room, and that's going to bring things up. So the rewiring might be $3,000. Yeah, you've got to do plastering and tidying up anyway, so this is a good opportunity to do it. So you know, possibly
But maybe the rent, because it have garage, maybe it will be, but it's small, so that's why I give 1,150. But other properties are, you have properties who are renting for 1,350 around.
Are there any comparables with?
No, this property, no. It have late in the day in 2020, but it's not comparable because now the prices are much up. So.
Well, you know, it doesn't take much of a rent uptick to improve the final numbers. The other thing to consider is the refinancing. So if you acquire this property, do the renovation, refinance later, you're in a good place. Now, in its current state, there is this whole thing about could it be mortgaged, and technically it does have a kitchen, but the kitchen isn't really functional. They don't show me a picture of it, but let's just quickly go into that kitchen. I would need to talk to David or one of our mortgage people about this. It's just, is that a viable kitchen? I suppose you could call it a kitchen, and theoretically it could be mortgaged. Yeah, there are a lot of questions about this property. The fundamental question is it worth all the aggravation and the risk? Okay. Let's just pause on that and have a think about it. What's your opinion, Martin?
We didn't score it.
Oh, We better
maybe
do that.
Maybe that will help us.
Yeah, and then I'll be thinking about it in the background, and I'll give you some thoughts on it. Okay, let's just, sorry, I need to put the name of the thing in here.
27.
And there we go. All right, condition.
3.
Appalling.
They're not, I don't see structural, so.
Yeah. Oops. I'll just change that to row 3. There we go. Now we can see. All right. Condition 3. Yeah, there's nothing about this house that would say don't do it.
Yeah.
But there are risks. Location?
Really nice. 4.3.
Area?
4.5.
You love this area.
Yeah.
Demographic is actually very, very good. Capital growth exceptional. But risky exceptional. But I think it's their yield.
3.2. Really low. It's on the borderline.
Yeah, well, 5.2 is borderline, but then once you get the thing refinanced, you know, the key to this actually is cost of money.
Yeah.
If you can get borrowings cheap enough, then it's a really viable deal, although it is a big renovation. Okay, in summary then, we know that there's an offer at around the asking price on this. You should assume 30,000 in renovation cost, but you might be able to thin it out. It has to be done to a reasonably high standard.
Yeah.
It's a fundamentally good house, like no damp issues, well built from the get-go. There are people trying to extend it. It does have compromises because of the way the backyard garage setup is done. So you can't really extend these properties fully, and thus it will always be compact. I deliberate about it. I think if you want to take a punt on the capital growth, I think it's worth it, because there's nothing difficult with the renovation. There's nothing fundamentally problematic with it. It's a big-ish renovation, but it's a straightforward renovation.
Yeah.
And I think this property will be very desirable as fully renovated. In other words, I think it'll value up a long way, and yet thus when you refinance, you're in a good place with it.
Yeah.
Can you finance it straight off the bat? I suppose you could. It does have a kitchen after all, so technically it's mortgageable, I assume. But we need to validate that. So I think the upshot is, if you are interested in this property, seriously interested, then we have to make some more inquiries and talk to a few people about a few things, i.e., is it mortgageable? Is it mortgageable? And what about the renovation? What are the big risks there? The wiring is a bit of a risk, and the reorganizing of all the boilers. So it's a multi-trade project. In other words, you're going to need an electrician, plumber, plasterer, carpeting, painting, decorating. Yeah, quite a lot of trades, but it's a big enough job to warrant enough people coming in doing their things, and you'd have to assume a 2-month project and possibly building regulations oversight. In other words, building control officer dropping in and going, hi, are you doing everything to building regs? Possibly some modification to the stairs as well, a few other bits and pieces. All right, there it is. It's an interesting one. I think the final distilled thing is, if you're up for a big renovation, you want to take a punt on capital growth, it's a great property. If not, let somebody else take the risk.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.